That's true.
Also confident. I had a long day. I would have been fine, and it's still. It takes me about 45 minutes. Okay, now it's officially 6 o'clock. All right. Good evening. Let's call to order the special meeting for the Open Space Authority.
Director Kennett,
Here.
Director Flaher,
Here.
Director Chapman, Director Annabelle, Director Alexander, here, Director Potter,
Here.
Director Gale.
Yeah.
And this portion of the meeting is reserved for persons desiring to address the committee on any matter not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Are there any speakers wishing to address the committee?
There are none.
Close public comment. Go straight to new business. So we have the authorization of additional contingency funds for change orders for the Logan Street pedestrian trail and bridge installation project. And where's look at, all right, take it.
Thank you, directors, for being here this evening for the special meeting. As you all are aware, kind of time is of the essence on kind of construction projects. I really appreciate you being here to resolve this item on the agenda. So everything is outlined in the report. I'll provide a brief summary and follow up with any questions. In June 2023, the board approved a contract with Brandon Corporation as our general contractor for the bridge and day use area project, which includes installation of new bridge connection at Rancho Piñata del Oro open space preserve, connecting the existing asphalt loop trail across Yagas Creek to the former Blair Ranch property. The project scope includes concrete bridge abutments, prefabricated metal bridge, and then a new ADA accessible loop trail on the former Blair Ranch portion of the property. The contractor started work in August on construction, and construction proceeded very well. To date, the loop trail is actually nearly complete. All the paving's in, it's kind of just cleanup left, as well as the excavations begun. And then we actually had the bridge delivered last week. So we have a bridge on site, and the contractor, the general contractor, has bolted two pieces together and it's staged ready to be built. So the end of September, as we were excavating for the bridge abutments, which are poured in place concrete, there was unseasonably high water levels that were hit. And so the contractor had to stop construction because the high water levels would not allow them to get into the beds and form concrete, because the concrete would wash away. So contractor reached out and asked for direction and guidance from our design team, which includes our geotechnical engineer, structural engineer, and civil engineer, who do these projects all the time and run into these issues. And so their recommendation was that the most cost-effective and time-effective way of addressing this was basically to do a fairly minor change to the bridge abutments, which would include removing an additional 2 feet or so of soil down to the bedrock, and replacing that with a quick drying. They'll pump it and replace that with quick drying concrete, which will serve as kind of the bottom foundation for the abutments. So they'll be much more secure in the long run, having that concrete underneath them. And so that was deemed the most effective and efficient way to address this. And again, this condition, at the time we did our geotechnical report testing, and looked at the stream gauge data from the last 10 or so years. There's never been water this time of year, so it's very unexpected. And that was what the bid and construction documents at the time we bid as the contract documents based off of. So this is in fact an unusual condition that we needed to address. So following that recommendation of the contractor from the engineers, the contractor put pricing on it. Came in at approximately $65,000 for this change, which would take us above the contingency that the board has previously approved, which was the 10% contingency on a $782,000 contract, so $78,000 contingency. So staff's request, a recommendation tonight is to approve an additional 5% on top of that 10% contingency to be a 50% total contingency, taking us to $117,442 for the contingency amount. Total construction, if we were to use all of that contingency, would be $900,392. And I wanted also to mention for just for everyone's knowledge, we had 2 other bids on this project and the second bid was about $100,000 more, and the other one about $125,000 more, just to give you kind of a frame of where everything landed at that point in time. I will stop there and open up to the questions.
Any questions?
Sounds like it's well done, and too bad it doesn't include the toll booths, I don't think.
Oh, yeah, and that asked me to mention too, we have 1.12 million in grant funding on this project, so the cost of the construction contract, we used all the contingency 900,000, and then the bridge that we had delivered was 129,000, so that brings us in 1,030,000 for the construction portion of the city's design fees, but we have a $1.12 million grant, so that grant will at least as of now cover construction and bridge costs.
Yes, Director Kim.
What is the total cost of this project?
The total cost is about 1.3 million.
1.2 we already get from some.
1.12.
1 point, okay, so, and the rest we have to be paid for.
We will, and we paid for it in past fiscal years for the most part.
So right now, we just need to be on from 10% to 15%, right? That's the change.
That's recommendation.
Okay, silly question, but and you think it's gonna be solid enough that water flow, we get another rainy year, so this will probably even take care of that and any other future erosion that could happen?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm not an engineer, but according to our geotech engineer, instead of having the bridge foundations have like aggregated or something between, this will be the fast drying concrete is actually stronger than the foundations and as strong as the bedrock. So it should be pretty.
Director Flower.
Thank you. Yeah. Could we have found this soon?
That's a really good question. And I think we couldn't have really expected how much water there would be. Look, I mentioned the gauges. There's never been water flowing as long back as we have that data. And Derek Newman has, doubled the gauges experience. When I mentioned to him that there was still water flowing, he said, he's like, there's not flowing though, right? It's just water sitting. So I think this is a very, very unusual year. So it would have been hard to predict. And even if we said there's a lot more water, what's it look like without actually digging those pits and excavating? There would have been no way of how, knowing how much water it was and how to do it.
So where I'm getting it is to be more proactive, we do projects and not try to yes, we try to be predictive. And so when we put a project together, we have a contingency on design that's large enough to allow for these things. We can always not use it and use it on other things. But I'd rather see that be designed into it up front than have us stop in progress and think, oh, we gotta go back and think about this. What if bedrock was another 20 feet down? And you didn't know that. And so bridge abutments are one of those things that people are very careful at when engineers take a look at that. And considering the amount of water we had last year and where it happened in the valley, 10 years isn't enough to go back and look. You need to look at 100-year and then do a risk analysis against cost benefit and say, well, we now know if you have to go down a couple more feet and do this style of quick concrete and whatnot. This is what it costs. We know what that looks like. And so if we spend another 10K in getting a better assessment up front and not have to do this after we're in it and come back to the board or have a higher contingency in building these things based on the geology, I would be happy.
Yeah, thank you, Director Flucker. I appreciate the comment and point taken. And I think moving forward, thinking about the amount we have on contingency is a really good point. Is 10% enough in this climate of construction? And especially on a project that this is a relatively small construction project. And so 10% doesn't get you as far as a major project, project if you run into a situation like this. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Anvil.
I'd like to be reminded of where the $1.2 million grant came from.
It was the California State Parks Proposition 60 per capita grant fund.
Yeah.
And Director Alexander.
Yeah, the other two bids that were higher, did either one of them go down to the bedrock? Was that part of the higher cost or?
No, the cost for all of them was actually based on going to the bedrock. That was less the issue, and I think it may not have had to go even all the way down to the bedrock. Really, the issue is having to pull out more material to create a solid enough foundation to get above the water, so that they can build the forms for the concrete. So the bids should have all been, based on the exact same documents and details that were provided by our engineers.
And then were the, I think there was already $28,000 in contingency costs, and were those just kind of normal things that came up?
Yeah, so there was two different change orders that have been approved by staff, and they were normal things that came up. One, for example, was we're intending to reuse some of there's a bunch of trees that are down in the meadow, as you all recall when you were out there. We were going to reuse a lot of those, but since we designed it 2 years ago, some of them had rotted, some of them weren't big enough, and we decided to go with purchase those benches instead of using them. So things like that are very typical changes during construction.
Thank you.
Dr. Potter.
I had a question. We have another bridge in that area that I remember being built when I first joined the board. Probably should check on that, make sure it is doing well.
I was just hesitating to comment because I haven't looked at it, but Derek did actually inspect it afterwards. He said there was a little bit of scouring, but he may have even had it. I'll double check this, but he may have had the engineer check. Yeah. We have an on-call engineer too we've been using to evaluate our bridges and things.
Given the increased amount of water this last year.
Yeah,
It's gonna not be a one-off. But
Okay. Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I'm happy to
Move.
We have a motion from Director Kennett with a second by Director Flocker.
And then would you like to call for public comments?
Are there any public comments on this item?
None.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Director Kennett,
Yes.
Director Flaher,
Yes.
Director Chapman,
Yes.
Director Annabelle,
Yes.
Director Alexander,
Yes.
Director Potter,
Yes,
Director Gale.
Yes,
All right, that motion passes unanimously. That being the only item for this special meeting, we are now adjourned until the regular meeting.